Welcome, everybody, to the June 2nd, 2022, 9 a.m. Planning Board meeting here in Council Chambers. If we could, seeing we have an agenda to start the meeting, can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reading the conflict of interest statement. Does any member of the planning board have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regard to any item on the agenda? If so, please state so at this time. Sybil?
No.
No.
No for me?
Nope.
We have an agenda before us. Does anyone wish to suggest an amendment? Otherwise, we can go to approve the agenda as is.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adjust the agenda. Just the order is move number 4 in new business up to number 2 so that we can kind of dispose of the 2 plats first, or 2 plans first, and then move on to text amendment discussion and work just from a mental flow standpoint.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Any discussion? Or second, I should
Second.
say.
I will second.
And any
that.
discussion on that? I agree with that. It will get the 2 plans out there first.
Okay.
We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will move number 4 up to number 2, and 2 and 3 will move down into 3 and 4. Item number 3 on our agenda is public comments. 3 minutes. Does anybody have public comment? Please step to the microphone and state your name and address, and we have 3 minutes, please.
Good morning. Good morning, Bob Forrester, 110 Crooked Gully Circle. I'm wanting to address agenda items, what was 2 and 3, now 3 and 4, the text amendments. The land use plan contains a significant, important note in that plan, which references policy number 27, that any official town decisions inconsistent with the policy statements in the land use plan require an amendment to that plan. And then they quotes policy 27 that says any official town land use and development related actions, namely zoning, text amendments, special use permits, stormwater rules, etc., shall remain consistent with the policies adopted in the land use plan and any other applicable plan. And any town actions that are inconsistent with such plans require a statement from the town body approving such decisions as to why those decisions are necessary and in the community's interest and how the negative impacts will be mitigated. As to the text amendments, number 2, 606C in the MR3 non-residential setbacks. This section deals with bulk requirements for commercial uses. This section deals with bulk requirements, or the proposed section, for commercial uses in the MR3 zone district. This section contains no other bulk requirements for commercial uses in the MR3 zone because commercial uses are not permitted in that zone. The most obvious non-residential use in the MR3 zone district to which the proposed text amendment would be applicable is the unique situation of the connection of the Sea Trail Convention Center to the Magnolias Jonesburg Clubhouse in one structure which predated the land use plan and the UDO. If this commercial building was to be separated, there would be no side yard between the commercial structures. This would provide a unique situation and one which I don't think is appropriate for a text amendment, which would then be applicable as a matter of right to the entire MR3 district without any further bulk requirements. The relief sought would appear to be more appropriate for bulk variance relief, which would then be applicable only to the characteristics of that particular land use. I'm not suggesting the building could not be separated, but do not believe the proposed requirements should be applicable as a matter of right throughout the MR3 zone district, even with the proposed restrictions to a 36-hole golf course. This, of course, would mean the only place that the MR3 zone of which I'm aware where these bulk requirements would apply would be throughout the Sea Trail golf courses, which I would argue amounts to spot zoning. The second text amendment introduces commercial use as a matter of right within the MR3 zone district, where they are presently not permitted. Section 6.03 of the UDO establishes primary zone districts, provides for the MR3 exclusively for residential development with provision for single-family, multifamily development, and customary secondary uses. This language establishes this zoning district would also have to be amended, as it does not, which is not presently before you. It needs to be amended because it does not provide for any commercial uses, either by right or special use. The present language of the UDO is in keeping with the language of the land use plan, which you have in your packet, identifying commercial development as an inappropriate use in the description of high-density residential and medium-density residential uses, both of which the MR3 zone consists. At the present time, with the exception of restaurants as a special use, none of the proposed uses are permitted as a matter of right
15 seconds, Bob.
or otherwise within the MR3 zone district, but are permitted in the MB1, MB2, BB1, and MUD districts, in keeping with the policy statements of the land use plan and 6.03 of the UDO, that the MR3 be exclusively for residential development. I also suggest the board's inclined to make the recommendation to the changes that the other changes, substantial changes, need to be made to bring the rest of the UDO in compliance with what would be result from those text amendment changes.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate your comments. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to consideration approval of minutes. We have two planning board, one a special meeting, one a regular meeting, minutes, February 17th and May 5th of 2022 before us. Does anyone have any comments for changes or discussion on approval?
Either or the first one?
First one.
No, not on February 17th. I'm okay. No.
Anybody have any issues? I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the February 17th, 2022 special meeting minutes of the planning board.
I second that motion.
You have to make the motion.
Make the motion.
I motion to approve the minutes February 17th.
In a second.
No, you go.
Go ahead, I'll second it.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Same motion like to entertain for the May 5th, 2022 regular planning board minutes. I'd like to have a motion to accept.
I so move.
Well,
Second.
there's a small typographical error
On
on page
May
3,
5th.
packet page 9. Actually, Pete, your comments way at the bottom, Article 7 says, member Larkin requested adding. Larkin also requested adding ionized aluminum. That's anodized aluminum.
Okay.
No such thing as ionized aluminum. It's anodized, anode, AN. So it's just a technical
You
change.
see that on page 3? It's
So
at
the
the very,
fourth
very
sentence at the
bottom.
Larkin also requested adding ionized, that it's actually called anodized aluminum.
About 6 lines up from the bottom. Okay. What would be our procedure on that? Can you make the change and then I'll sign it? Okay.
Can you just hand make the change on it?
I don't think we can do it by hand.
Mhm.
You can tell
Okay.
us that, though. That's all right.
Other than that, it's fine.
Okay. Like to have a motion to accept with that revision as suggested by Ron. We have a motion.
I so move.
Can we have a second?
I
Second.
already did.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. I'll get up with you, Katie, after that. All right. Moving on to new business. The first item before us today is the Sunset Dental site plan, building expansion. Chad, can you give us some background on that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Norris and Tunstall Engineering on behalf of Coldwater Properties owners requesting the approval and the construction for the expansion of the existing Sunset Dental dentist office. The subject property is located in the mainland MB2 zoning district, not MB1.
Yes, I was going
At
to suggest that.
688 Sunset Boulevard North. Subject parcel is currently zoned MB2 and may be further identified as Brunswick County parcel number listed below. This is an expansion of the dental office that's existing now. They are looking to add just over 2,600 square feet and to an existing just over 5,600 square foot facility. And my comments are listed below along with the plans, landscaping plans, lighting plan, and all of that. So I'll turn it. And the applicant is here if you have any questions for me or him.
Okay. The only comment I had going first was I'm disappointed in our UDO requirements or lack of requirements for protection of heritage trees. Stating to the public now on YouTube that we are going through the UDO, and in fact our next meeting, special meeting, will be dealing with landscaping and tree preservation. But I don't find anything that shows that they are violating anything. I was particularly interested in seeing the stormwater management or stormwater retention plan, which is an expansion, I believe, of the existing one that's there. It would be the same type, because I didn't really see details on that. You have any comments?
Sure. Jody
Introduce yourself.
Bland, Norris and Tunstall Engineering. Yes, there's current arch chamber underground system under the front parking lot. We'll be expanding that for the new wing or the additional impervious surface. It's a kind of canned product that's approved by DEQ. It's sold by Advanced Drainage Systems. It's a really good product. It's a great solution in a small footprint, and it's worked perfectly already, so they have no problems expanding it for the future expansion. So.
And it seems to function very well on the existing property.
Yes,
the existing
it's
structure that's there.
Yeah, it's easy to maintain. They just do some general maintenance every year or so, and it should be continue to operate as normal. So. Out of sight, out of mind. So.
Sure. Well, everything seemed to make sense to me as I looked at it, but does anybody have any specific comments? We can start on my left with Ron, please.
Just a couple of questions, I guess. Maybe to Chad on section C, site requirements D. You got that little note on the bottom. If proposing a second entrance exit, currently not proposed NC. So according to the drawings, there's not one. What was the reason for that note? Was there some discussion they might?
If they did, then I was noting to the engineer if they did that they would need to apply for
A new
a separate
permit.
DOT permit.
Okay.
That was a
Yeah.
comment from DOT when we had TRC.
Yeah,
if I
the
recall.
DOT responded back with a TRC comment very similar. They already have the existing driveway. They're expanding that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
East,
west.
West.
So if they were to, I know they're doing interconnectivity, they'll stub out to the adjoining vacant property line. But if they did happen to propose a second entrance or exit off of DOT road, that they would be required to get a permit.
So if the neighboring property, could you connect to that stub too, then there could be an entrance.
Yeah, they'll be stubbing out to vacant land.
And I guess my next question was concerning 3, the landscaping. And I don't know if we have anything to do with this.
Wait,
On the landscaping plan,
What drawing is that, please?
it doesn't have a drawing number. It's the one from Freeman Landscape.
Yep.
Packet page 21. I
Okay.
noticed that in the back they're saying pine straw. And I forgot to look this morning. Is that,
It's 10 feet off of the building. They're allowed to use
yeah,
pine
but I'm
straw.
worried about the people on the other side. Is that residential there with wood stockade fences?
Yeah, yes.
I thought we were discouraging pine straw.
It's not illegal.
I know.
No.
But you have like regular mulch, which I'm assuming is tree
Bark.
mulch somewhere else. Why, just pine straw here?
The landscape designer just
Yeah, I guess
put it
I
in accordance to the ordinance.
guess it's not illegal. Like we can't comment on it other than we were discouraging pine straw in areas that could catch fire if there's a wooden stockade fence back there.
In residential, we cannot mandate pine straw is allowed to be used, although just like you said, we strongly discourage it because of its flammability. But with commercial, the way the UDO is written, They must use they cannot use pine straw within 10 foot of a structure, but they can use it further away from the structure than that.
Fence is not considered a structure?
A building structure.
Okay.
It's when I say structure, I
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
mean,
So
Going back to
fence.
definitions, I know we talked about this before the meeting, but definitions, fence is not considered a structure.
So
by
then
the
I just
definition.
request the property owner here, maybe request Freeman to reconsider pine straw to a different type of mulch. I can't imagine that there's a lot there,
Right.
but.
I'll let them know your concerns.
Right.
Okay. Another question along that same line. I assume that alternate board fence that's there now, which is quite attractive as a buffer from the residential, is going to continue on. But I didn't see anything on the drawings that told me that it was going to continue on. It could be there and I couldn't read it.
Right. I don't know if we've noted a fence. I don't know if it's actually required, Chad, to extend that fence. So
It's not.
right now we have not proposed it, but it will be up to the owner if he wanted to continue to extend.
Well, I think Dr. Jones wanted the fence because patients are looking out as they're having their hygiene, and so I guess they don't want kids staring in.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chair, I can comment a
we'll
little bit
ask
on
him.
that. It's one of those things where you can, for buffering standards, you can use fencing or vegetative buffering and or both to meet your buffering requirements.
Mhm.
Fence is not required. They didn't propose one, but their vegetation meets their buffering requirements. If they want to add a fence, they can certainly talk to me about getting that permitted and doing that, but it'd be up to the applicant.
Hopefully, Dr. Jones would want to keep the same nice-looking
Consistent. Yeah.
as he has right now.
Yeah.
But-
Well, I've made note of it, and I'll let him.
Okay, very good. Any other comments, Ron, from you?
No, sir.
Jerry?
I got one, if you touched on the other ones, the privacy fence, which I guess has been handled. Impervious coverage, okay, it's good. The only other thing I would suggest you add would be some electrical parking spots. I didn't see anything on the plan with the big movement to reduce our carbon footprint. I think would be something worthwhile doing.
Okay. I'll let him know.
That's all I.
Obviously, we can't mandate that, but
Right.
it's a good suggestion. Just like bike racks and other things like
Yeah,
that
bike
are usually good suggestions. Sybil?
Yeah, I mean,
No, I was very impressed with it. I thought they did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Was a good package, yes.
Thank you.
Chad, do you have any comments?
yeah, with the bike rack, I mean, Jody did add that in. They do meet the overlay districts. The color is going to be still the same as the current building. So the overlay districts did come into play because they were over the, what was it, 25%?
Yeah.
The 25%
Cost
of the
threshold.
cost of the building.
Yes,
So they did add the bike rack in there. So I think
that's
it's
the Gateway Overlay
yeah,
Project.
Gateway overlay. Yes, sir.
All right, seeing no more comments, I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the Sunset Dental site plan for the building expansion.
I so move.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Nice package. Okay, moving ahead. Our next item, we've moved up number 4, final plat, Phase 1, Eastwood Bluffs Townhomes. Chad, will you give us some background on that, please?
Yes. So if you remember, about a year and a half, roughly in the past year and a half, Eastwood Bluffs Townhomes was approved via preliminary plat. They have buildings on the ground now. And if you remember the text amendment we did about a year ago, allowing them to subdivide the units out as ownership from ground.
Fee simple?
Fee simple ownership, yes, sir. So the first 4 or 5 buildings are coming before you. I think it is buildings 13 through 16.
Yes.
Riptide Builders, the owner and applicant, is requesting the final plat for approval of Phase 1 of Eastwood Bluff Townhomes. The final plat approval will grant permission to construct and operate buildings 13 through 16, multifamily residential units in the Sea Trail community. Again, the building permits have already been issued for these.
For all of the buildings?
Not all of them. They're going in phases, but these 4 are coming before you, 13 through 16, for fee simple ownership divide. The foundations are poured. I think when I was out on site a couple weeks ago, they were through the framing stages.
The roofs
And
are on them
the
now.
roofs are on them now. I will say this, everything meets the standards. I have the Mylar in my office. The landscaping will not be installed until they are ready for CO. I wanted to make that clear to the board, that the applicant and I have agreed that the landscaping will be installed before a CO is granted. So a CO has not been issued for these buildings. They're still under the construction phase. And I want to let y'all be aware that the applicant is here and he is prepared to answer any questions that y'all have, and will be available to answer questions as well.
I had one comment regarding section 1305. Chad, in your comments, that's boilerplate, and then you in red on our packet
Okay.
have your comments. One that we're going to be hopefully changing here now is G6. It's on our packet page 69, and it keeps referring to sewer and water by the town. That's the way it used to be. It needs to be by the county. And I just want to make clear for the record that the town, for any viewers, that the town is not reviewing the sewer and water.
Correct, and we're not, I mean, that's part of the TRC that is sent out to Brunswick County Utilities and Stormwater or Engineering. Brunswick County has signed off on the Mylar for water and sewer. It's already there, and the Mylar's in my office.
So this note, can BC sign off, that is
Yeah,
now done?
that's done, yep.
Okay.
Does anybody have any specific comments about the packet? We can start down on Sybil's end.
No.
I got one
Sure.
question. This development, you have so much development going on,
No.
which is fantastic. Is this
Todd, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yes. Todd Rademacher. I'm with the community planner for Riptide Builders.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I know we had quick. Is this the one that's contiguous to hole number 3 on Bird? This development we're looking at.
This is on hole wise. I'm not 100%
Yes, it
sure,
is.
No, he's right.
Yes, it
He's-
is.
yeah.
but it's on the corner of Clubhouse Road and Eastwood
Okay,
Park
so
Road.
it is. So again, where if I'm teeing off on that white tees on hole number 3, and
Yes.
how to kind of spray the ball to the right,
Yeah.
is there any provisions going to be done with either changing that tee box or?
That is outside the scope of what Riptide does. We do not have any ownership of the golf course or golf course facilities.
Well, eventually you're going to have some friends there coming over, picking up their balls, golf balls.
I mean,
I'm just throwing. this out
I
there
certainly
because
understand what you're saying, but that is obviously commonplace on golf courses.
Their HOA requirements do specifically mandate and,
That they
and show the homeowners to expect this.
Okay.
And it was on page 47
It is
of
in there,
300, being facetious. But
It is.
I was glad that they at least addressed that.
That's
but
fine.
You're right. It's going to change the
No,
the
it's
way
important to
that
let
dirt hole
everybody
plays.
know that golf balls
Will.
inherently will come onto your property when you live on a golf course community. 100%.
I've
We just
got
need better golfers.
some comments, but I want to turn to Ron first.
I'm good. I'm fine.
In a site visit, I noticed that adjacent to Building 13, as it ties into Eastwood Park Road,
Correct.
there's a curb cut right there now and new pavement
Yes.
coming back and forth, and it's a wide
Correct.
area, but it's set downward, which I guess would probably be south of the existing Kings Mill Court
Yes.
curb cut that goes through that median. There's a median down Eastwood Park Road. And as I was leaving the site, I said, I can just jog left going wrong way on the median and scoot back in and
Sure.
then get out towards Clubhouse Road. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I talked with your project manager out there about, was there an idea of making another curb passageway through that median and I knew the answer. I'm sure that they would not allow it because they would make 2 openings within about 25 feet of each other.
Yeah, you'd have offsetting driveways, which is a big no-no from subdivision design. The other thing is that there will be a median that goes inside the main entrance. Chad and I have spoke about that a couple times. It just doesn't make any sense to put it in today. With the large trucks that are coming in there, concrete trucks, delivery trucks, stuff like that, they'll just run over it and we'll be rebuilding and landscaping
So
it.
you'll have to cut through the pavement now to put it in? or-
Possibly cut through the pavement. A lot of times when you put one of those small
talking about
landscape.
here?
Yes, sir.
So you're talking about splitting that one opening into 2 lanes
Correct.
so that someone in the
Just like you have at the,
right-hand side can't make that left.
well, they
Well,
can, but they
it's
should.
more difficult.
Correct.
Correct. They'll be guided to go.
All right.
Yes. And remember too, the long-term plan for Eastwood Park Road is for that to be a fully contiguous and continuing road all the way to Mill Pond
Yes.
Road.
Rice mill?
Rice mill.
No, that'll go to Mill Pond. There's a new road, Mill Pond, that goes past Jen and Dana's office, the office building
Okay,
for Sea Trail.
okay. I know what
That's
you mean
a
now.
future road that goes all the way to Angel's Trace.
And
As
we
it
have
was laid
trouble
out
with the
years
fire
ago.
trucks. You get down there and you can't, there's no
Correct.
turnaround, so you have to back all the way
So
back
Eastwood
out.
Park will dead end into that road when it eventually gets continued because there's already water and sewer in that
Okay.
road or in that proposed space. So it'll be more likely that you won't have that
Okay.
cheat, as it were.
Because as I pulled out and I was doing it the proper way, because your project manager was watching me, I turned right and then I said, okay, I'll just turn where the median ends. And you can't make that turn without driving over the fellow's lawn.
Sure, I
that's
agree.
there.
Not that
So,
I've tried it, but I
right
understand.
now, even if somebody were to turn right, because Eastwood Park Road is not a through road,
Correct.
there is going to need to be accommodations. Chad, are you following me here?
So if I could touch on one item, we did not get, we were working off a set of plans and a road design that was already pre-approved in 2007, 2008. When we got the site plan approved and reviewed, it was basically just a reapproval of the existing site plan. The water and sewer has been in since 2008 in that subdivision. Same thing with the stormwater infrastructure for all the roads. Pretty much what you see is, no, not pretty much. What you see is exactly what was laid out in 2008, at that time. It would be a very bad traffic design decision to extend or widen that opening.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, so basically what you're going to end up with then is more of a right in, right out situation once that island's in there. And that's exactly what you would want to have at an entrance like that.
But until Eastwood Bluff is a through street, Eastwood Park Road is a through road, people are going to, coming out of Building 13 and making that right-hand turn, which you're going to force them to do by delineating that median, they're going to have to do a 3-point turn to get back out into Clubhouse Road.
That's why it's a great thing that there's a second entrance in that neighborhood. Your best bet, if you're a resident or a homeowner in that subdivision, like all the homeowners have had to do there for the past 15 years, or I guess 15 years, is go to the opposite entrance further down, and then you'll be able to make a left with no median and come back around. I mean, that's certainly something we probably should have or could have discussed during the site plan reapproval, but we were basically just reapproving an existing site plan, and I can't speak to what happened here in 2007.
Yeah.
7.
Peter, but you're talking about someone trying to make that left here?
And you can't.
So when-
Without stopping and backing up, you have
Are
to do
they
it.
stuck with this median where it is, where they could change this end to allow
The road's not wide. The whole road
No,
isn't
but if
wide
you-
enough.
It would be if you take,
Chad, if I'm not mistaken, we are beyond the point of redesigning
yeah.
the site at this point.
Yeah, Todd, if I'm also not mistaken, that's a town-owned road.
Correct.
So, if it's something I can talk to Dustin about. I don't know what the town would want to do if they wanted to redesign that median.
I don't know what you can do.
Right. So, I mean, Todd and I do-
Redesigning the median isn't going to widen the whole street, and the street needs to have a certain width to be able to make a U-turn.
So it's kind of unfortunate under the situation.
The only thing they could do is to come back onto Eastwood Bluff property and put a little knockout to make the road wider right there. But that's going to interfere with
Now
other
there's
buildings, Building 7, Building 6.
Yeah, and the other thing is
street
that
trees, sidewalks,
proponents
utility lines, power lines.
Does the board see the situation.
Right, so Chad's saying the town owns that median.
Yeah, the
We own that
So the
road.
town can make a change.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with the builder.
correct.
And
But
we're
it's
allowed-
also,
So you could actually break through that median and allow that person to make that left turn.
if that's what the town wants to do,
So
I
it'd be
think
up to Dustin and you guys to decide whether that's a better,
I can
safer
raise,
traffic pattern than have people try to do 3-point turns down here.
I can raise it to Dustin. Again,
It has nothing to do with these guys.
it has nothing to do with this project.
So that's just something for town staff to take under consideration.
Yep.
When, as this gets completed in COs, do they think a safer traffic pattern is breaking that median up and allow that person to make that left?
So we can clear Todd from here, because this may not be his issue.
Yeah.
It is.
Mr. Chair,
Turn
this
to
is,
Chad.
this is something that's not even, it's, the only thing that's required for this project is it's the width and how they stub out to that road. And that's been
So
accomplished.
this is our problem.
This is our problem, not
Okay. I apologize for bringing our problem to you.
No,
But
we
I didn't know
certainly
where else to
support
go.
anything you guys want to do to help alleviate the
Right.
traffic
You're
problems
willing to
for
work with staff on suggestions that may
Yeah.
improve the situation.
But as
Yeah.
far as
points of conflict need to be reduced for
But
sure.
as far as making, you can suggest to the applicant that they make that a right in, right out. We can't mandate it.
But that is the ultimate intent of that
Yes.
entrance, is to be a right in,
Right
right
out.
out, which is
And that's what your project manager
Again-
explained to me.
Yeah.
So it's,
And again, it's not required by the UDO, so we can't make them do it. They're doing it on
if
their own.
you've answered my question. It's our
But-
problem, not yours.
But as Mr. Rademacher states that they're going to, the requirements of installing that right in, right out bumper is they can do it at their leisure, whatever phase they want to, through whatever phase what they want to.
As long as people don't make an illegal turn, which
Yeah.
they would be, if they go left out of there, that's illegal, because it's a delineated median, which would have one way on each side of the median.
correct. Correct.
All right.
And I will, in all honesty, down the road, it's probably until that road opens up, it's probably better to shut the access for the right-hand turn coming out of
Yes.
Kings Mill Road, I believe that is there. So they can't make a right. If you close up that access, then nobody has the opportunity to go head on into traffic. But
Okay.
just throw that out there for the town.
All right. Again, that's still a town issue, not yours. Anybody have any more comments on our item number 2 here? Final plat, Phase 1, Eastwood Bluffs Townhomes approval, buildings 13 through 16. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the packet as presented.
I make a motion to approve the packet as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
And we'll be seeing more of you, I guess, today, obviously. All right, moving on to our item number, which is now item number 3, UDO amendment, 6.06C, MR3 non-residential side setback. Chad, if you could give us some background, please.
Sure. Again, Riptide Builders has submitted a text amendment to amend Article 6, Mainland Multifamily Residential District, Section 6.06C. Planning staff has had multiple meetings and conversations with Riptide Builders, LLC, community planner, public relations staff member Todd Rademacher on a text amendment that would allow a zero lot line provision for non-residential structures, abutting non-residential structures in the MR3. The Unified Development Ordinance currently does not allow any setbacks for non-residential structures. Planning staff has been in conversations with Riptide Builders on a submittal for a text amendment allowing zero lot line provisions for non-residential structures abutting non-residential structures. Setbacks from all other entities shall be in place when a non-residential structure abuts a street, lot line, 1 or 2 family dwelling, or vacant residential lot. The side setback will be required to be a minimum of 12 feet from the property line. Planning board staff's proposal would be for staff, the applicant, to discuss with the planning board to make a recommendation for town council for final ruling. And the text is in there along with the consistency statement, the application, and what the text would look like, which would be adding MR or section 6.06C, E4. It would be adding the language non-residential structure setback. No side setback is required where adjacent to an existing non-residential structure, non-residential zoning district, or multifamily structure where abutting a street lot line, 1 to 2 family dwelling, or vacant residential zoned lot, the side setback shall be at least 12 feet. And again, the applicant is here, Mr. Rademacher, to answer any questions you might have, and staff is available as well.
So what they're talking about here is creating non-residential structures in a residential zoning district that could be like, but they're also talking like zero lot line there. You have multiple structures that are connected.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, well, I don't think I can. I'm trying to picture what we're trying to get to here, what we're trying to get to here. Or maybe,
I'll tell you what, if I can turn it over to the applicant
okay,
and then kind of circle back around on these questions, he might be able to shed a little bit more clarity on the situation.
I hate to use specific examples in the community or in our neighborhood within Sea Trail where we have interest, because this would be obviously broadly useful potentially for anybody within the MR3 zoning district. But what we're basically talking about here is if you can envision the Jonesburg Clubhouse and the convention center, is the ability to separate those two uses, not only by land, but ownership wise as well. The way they're currently set up, they are linked together on one large parcel of property.
so right now it's one giant building.
It is one giant building on
And-
one giant piece of property.
So it has to be sold as a one piece.
He's not talking about selling
No.
it as one piece.
If you ever transferred it, it would have to be as one piece.
Right.
Okay.
Right now, the way the ordinance is written right now, you have to own the Jonesburg Clubhouse and all the buildings that are attached there, and the convention center as one point. You couldn't have a second business owner / owner of the convention center or a second business owner as a owner of the Jonesburg Clubhouse and sell them anything other than interest in a property. Basically, I don't know, more like a condo right now, as opposed to full-blown interest in something that they can do improvements to and upgrades down the road and sell fee simple.
I think I've had conversations with the representatives from the Council of Governments. I think there's some provisions to legally subdivide this. There's some case law out there for situations like this. However, I think Mr. Rademacher and his team are also concerned about the non-conforming aspect of this as well. And that's mainly the two or three reasons about why this is being brought forward to you guys.
Because we're creating a nonconformance.
We're not, they are, but ultimately
Well,
the situation is creating a nonconformity. Yes,
So in other words, if they did it now, it would be non-conforming.
correct.
And it really is based upon, correct me, Chad, if I'm going down the right road here, it's because there'd be two separate owners.
Yes.
And at the specific case that Mr. Rademacher brought up was we'd have China Way as one, and we'd have
Somebody as the
somebody
second.
else with the convention center.
Yep.
Right, and they then would own the building and the parcel underneath it because it's split
Yeah.
along
So
some line or
Yeah, I mean,
zigzag or whatever it looks like.
And you still have to meet the minimum lot size requirement and all that kind of fun stuff.
ultimately, you're looking at subdividing a piece of land, not a building. That's what you do with land. You subdivide it. It just so happens there's a big behind building on this thing that is connected, and potentially going to have two different owners.
And there's no room for the required setbacks as written in the UDO right now,
Because-
side setbacks.
So it can't be
No, because
they're
they are
connected.
literally,
Well,
There's going to be a line going through a structure
But
that's just.
an option would be you remove that portion that connects the two for the proper site set. I'm not saying that's reasonable. I'm saying that would be a solution.
certainly.
And it would be, what is that setback, Chad? Is it 10% of the lot width Or I know on a corner lot, it's 12 feet.
It's 12 feet or 10%. So you're looking at least, 20 feet of setback there.
Yeah,
with
we
the
talked
10
about this. I can't
it's-
remember what
it's-
the number
it's
is.
It's big. I mean, you're talking about the lot width of the frontage of the road on that whole entire property, 10% of that, and then that's going to be required. It's probably beyond the 12. So we looked at avenues of what can do to get rid of the non-conforming, and the applicant brought forward this, and staff worked on language for this by adding, when you have a non-residential entity abutting a non-residential entity, then that's allowed to be a 0 lot line subdivision. When you have a non-residential entity abutting a multifamily parcel, single family, vacant residential lot, and then that separation still has to be 12 feet. It is only for non-residential abutting a non-residential.
Right, but we got an or multifamily in this language. I highlight that because I'm concerned about that. So the way I see this, now forget about the existing one at Sea Trail.
Correct.
Let's talk about a open field.
Hmm.
The way I read this is someone could put a commercial structure and put an apartment right next to it on a 0 lot line with a common wall because of that or multifamily structure. Now that might not have been intent, but that's the way I read it. I'm not talking about existing, I'm talking about greenfield. Okay, so there's a giant lot, they split it in two, they put a commercial property up, and right next to it, you can have a common wall with an apartment building or condominium, which maybe somebody wants, a condominium next to a little shopping mall or something. I can see where you might want it, but then we're saying, because there's one thing about fixing or avoiding a non-conformity with existing property, but a future, because this is going to apply to anything future in MR3. The way I read this, we're allowing that you could have, and maybe we're okay with it, because I could see where maybe you might want to do that, a little strip mall or shopping mall and a condominium right next to it, and they're two different properties, right? The way that's written, I see you could do that.
Yeah, Mr. Labruno, you're right. We're abutting a street lot line, 1 or 2 family dwelling, or vacant residential zoned lot. The side setback shall be at least 12 feet. Now, if it's if the pleasure of the board wants to look at it like that, the applicant is here. We can look at adding that multifamily to the 12-foot buffer as well.
Well, I don't know if we want to.
Right. I'm just I think you have that option there.
I mean, I could see, I've seen similar in more dense cities, okay, where you have tight land use where you put a condominium and you put the commercial right next to it, right? Matter of fact, and here I haven't even thought about whether we're talking only about vertically split or any horizontal split. Do you have the, I guess you could do it both ways with the residential above the commercial and vertically split, horizontally split that one and then vertically split that one. But that's more likely in a densely populated. I just want to make sure we're not getting into something here
No,
we don't want to get
Yeah,
into.
we're not getting into that.
Okay.
No. This would be-
Speaking specifically for our project out, if we want to get specific, and we don't have any intentions of putting residential units adjacent to like our office or a clubhouse or anything like that. Nothing. Our projects, as you've seen, are generally spaced out and
Right.
away from the commercial.
So maybe the thing to
entities.
do is get rid of that multifamily and move it down that you got to have the 12 feet for
The
any residential.
The problem here, though, is it establishes, and correct me if I'm going down the wrong path again here, Chad, it establishes a precedent where Mr. Rodemaker is being very specific about where the exact location we're looking at. It would seem to me that the Board of Adjustment would be an appropriate place to view this site-specific situation so that we don't open up section 6.06 to things that we aren't even contemplating right now.
Yeah, one of the things that could be looked at is a variance off the side setback to the Board of Adjustments. Not saying that's where it needs to go. I'm just saying that is an option.
We have discussed that. I
Yes.
think the problem is when you get into a variance request, it doesn't become a minor variance. It, like we talked about with the setback, you're talking about now you're asking for 20 to 25 foot variance.
Regardless, it would still be a variance. The option is to go.
But that's within the Board of Adjustments.
They're
purview,
supposed to be
correct?
for minor.
Well, I understand that, but we have an obligation to protect the long term. And
I don't foresee
I
any
think it's a good remedy.
situations for, I mean, Chad's got it written where it's for any existing commercial building, not for anything that's coming before you new or could potentially come before you new. This is for existing commercial structures. And, you know, make it for only existing commercial structures or current, you know, as of the adoption of the ordinance. I think Sea Trail specifically is unique in its nature with the, you know, multitude of non-residential buildings, and to have that kind of opportunity to continue to allow the subdivision to flourish is important.
But the way it is worded here, where it talks about a non-residential zoning district and then comma or multifamily structure, both of those open up the situation.
And I am 100% fine with, because we certainly didn't ask for any residential caveats. We only asked for non-residential.
So maybe that or multifamily structure phrase should be moved down to the next sentence.
Or even to the left of it, the non-residential zoning district. If you were right between MR3 and MB2, I don't know if there's a place where that happens. This same situation could in fact happen if it is a non-residential, if it abuts a non-residential a zone delineation point. And I don't see that needs to be part of this. Was there a reason that those two were added by staff, Chad?
I think the multifamily could be potentially an oversight on my part, but you want to make sure that the side setback where adjacent to an existing non-residential structure or non-residential zoning district. I think that's pretty well written, because what you've got here is if you take that entity out, then you have this example on one big MB1 property.
MR3.
Is it all MR3?
Everything's MR3.
So
Yes.
that's where, but the multifamily part is one we could move down to the bottom to make sure it's a 12-foot buffer.
Yeah, I would move that, the or,
Yeah.
to after the word family dwelling, right?
Yes. So it could read, for non-residential structure setback, no side setback is required where adjacent to an existing non-residential structure, non-residential zoning district,
Period.
where abutting a street, lot line, one or two family dwelling or vacant residential lot, and add in there or multifamily structure, the side setback shall be at least 12 feet.
I think the point
If that's good.
the path we're going to has to do with, we don't want this to come into play if there's a residential property that is one of the entities, whether it's be single family, townhome, multifamily. That's what we don't want. We only want to consider it if there's two non-residential properties.
Right. Now, I will have to ask if the way I just read that is okay with the applicant, because they did apply for this. If that's good with them, and if that's the pleasure of the board.
I don't have any issues with, adjusting for multifamily or anything like that, as long as the commercial buildings, can be, that was our main endeavor when we asked for the text amendment, was to move commercial buildings forward. If somebody ever wants to do something with residential buildings, I personally think that's highly unlikely in the MR3 district.
Well, the only other area I can see it would be maybe the Village Activity Center or something like that, where they wanted to come in and two people wanted to own it. Let's say somebody wanted to own the restaurant part and somebody wanted to own the pool part.
I would find that highly unlikely. That's more of a leased situation like they currently have now, like houses leases from. I don't even think he leases from Jen. I think he leases from Parker, and Parker leases the building from Jen in that situation. But
still, it's still two commercial activities
yeah, and it would still meet
in
all
the same building.
It would still meet the
With
setbacks
separate
from
ownership
residential
then.
because you'd
I'm
be
thinking out loud,
Yeah.
but yes, I would have to agree with you.
within the confines of Sea Trail. I'll just speak openly about that. Really, there aren't any. All the places where you could potentially put commercial structures or non-residential structures, as it were.
Well, it would have to be existing because that's
Right.
the wording here.
Correct. But you could build, I mean, the ordinance does allow for several commercial instances, or you could move a clubhouse. I don't know, build a restaurant if you got a special use permit, things of that nature. The way the ordinance is written today. The tracts of land that are appropriate for that type of use for quote unquote new aren't adjacent to residential homes. They're adjacent to golf
But we're
courses.
not talking about new.
Right. But I'm just saying there are no commercial entities that fall into the capacity of too close to residential homes. The back is 30, 40 feet away from any of the Royal Post units, probably 150, 200 feet from any of the Club Villa units. Jonesburg Clubhouse aren't near, and the convention center are nowhere near any residential structures in that area. They're light years away. The Maples Clubhouse, nowhere near. The Sea Trail offices, nowhere near. In all honesty, the only office, non-commercial facility that's it would be our office. Would be our office.
But again,
And you
would be-
wouldn't you couldn't do anything because it's already one building.
Chad, give us some guidance here.
And I would also say that on the smaller lots, you still have to meet the 10,000 square foot lot minimum, which would,
Right.
and setbacks, which would start to eliminate the smaller
Well, but
parcels.
we're not allowing residential and commercial to be adjacent to each other with no setbacks. Even
Correct.
if they're even
Correct. And we're
even
not
if
asking
they
for
had
that.
an existing building that they turned part of it into residential.
Yeah, I'm just spitballing what we've got inside those walls. And
Right, as long as we move the multifamily from the first sentence to the second sentence,
Yeah.
as Chad said, I see no possibility you could do this next to any residential structure.
Yeah, and then
At
it's
all.
got to be existing too. I think
And-
that's an important.
And then the first sentence says it's where required adjacent to an existing non-residential, or I guess you could say, or existing non-residential zoning district.
It does.
Well, it doesn't,
Well, it would need to the existing would need to be repeated in that second sentence
Yeah.
so that
Okay.
you say that you have continuity of thought there,
right.
so that you're not
Just
just
clean up the line. But the main thing is moving the multifamily from the first sentence to the second sentence.
and adding the word existing to that second sentence.
Yeah.
Where an existing non-residential structure abutting a street or lot line.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're changing the non-residential structure setback by that second sentence. And the word existing does not have to convey into that sentence.
I don't have my drunken white hand. I don't know if we need to find it in the first sentence. It's still defined, I believe.
I've fixed it, and I'm prepared to print this for you, submit it to Katie for the record. Is that non-residential structure setback, no side setback is required, where adjacent to an existing non-residential structure or non-residential zoning district, where abutting a street lot line, 1 to 2 family dwelling, vacant residential zoned lot, or multifamily structure, side setback shall be at least 12 feet.
And again, I think you need to repeat. I'm an engineer, not a poet, so I don't I want to make sure that the continuity on that second sentence isn't just talking about a non-residential structure, it's talking about an existing non-residential structure.
Okay, so read out to me what that second sentence.
Well, you'd have to start off with, again, non-residential structure no side setback for a non-residential structure where abutting a street or lot line. So the starting of that first sentence, which is no side setback, maybe because there's a colon there, it transfers into both of those sentences that follow
Yeah, it
in
does.
4.
So it says where abutting a street lot line, comma, 1 to 2 family dwelling, comma, vacant residential zoned lot, comma, or multifamily structure, comma. For all of those, the side setback shall be at least 12 feet.
It's almost like the non-residential existing structure setback should then have 2 bullet points underneath it, which would, you see what I mean? Which carry that thought to the 2 bullet points below. And it references non-residential existing structure setback, both of them, without having to repeat those words. In other words, to have when I say bullet points, I'm talking about a small a and a small b under 4.
So,
And the heading would be non-residential existing structure setback. And then a small a, which is what we all said here, except removal of or multifamily structure. And then small b would be where abutting a street, just like it's written there now.
Okay.
Again, I just want to be clear that we're talking about existing non-residential structures in both of those bullet points.
Not to throw a further wrench in this, but are we all okay with the 12 feet? Not concerning the existing place. Let's think about MR3 904 and Georgetown Road.
MR3 904, okay.
Somebody wants to put up a strip mall. Okay? This would allow it.
That's not, are you talking about on the Jaguar's Lair side of it?
No.
Is
Whatever that would be, the southwest corner.
south?
You're talking
If
about 904?
at the ends of these connected properties.
But they're not existing, so
So only
they're not existing.
Not existing. You're right. Never mind. I stand corrected. So you're right. So I'll go along. I agree. So if you create 4 as being existing non-residential structure setback and do an A and a B,
Yes.
I think we get there.
Yes.
So paragraph E.4, the major heading should be existing non-residential structure setback. And then subparagraph A, no setback is required where adjacent to existing non-residential structure, or you could say existing non-residential zoning district, period. Subparagraph B, where abutting a street lot line, 1 or 2 family dwelling, or multifamily dwelling, or vacant residential zone lot, the side setback shall be at least 12 feet.
any objection to that, Tom?
Off the top of my head, I don't see any issues with it,
All right,
but I got a
So
lot of
you
stuff
should
in my
print it
head.
out?
So
hold on. Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah.
All right.
We should move our printer in here.
do you guys want me to tell a story? Yesterday, my daughter graduated kindergarten, so
Yay.
I'm pretty proud of her over there. It's a good
You
day.
know, let's talk about the 12 feet, because when you look up in E2
Mhm.
above, when it talks about multifamily,
It's 20 feet between multifamily.
yes, it's a 20-foot side setback.
Yeah. So I was wondering about the 12, should be a higher number. no more than 20, maybe 15, I don't know.
Well, because it's a non-residential
But
structure, I
again,
think
these have to be existing structures, so they already have a setback, right? The ends already are
you're
there.
right. If it says existing, that
Right.
means it's nothing
That's
new.
where I started to go like you just did.
Yeah,
and then it's
I
okay.
agree. I agree.
Say there's an existing big non-residential structure already on a property. What was their side setback? Was probably already 12, right?
Probably already
For the
12.
benefit of those watching us on YouTube, town staff has stepped out of the room for a couple of minutes to provide us with a hard copy of what we've just talked about so that we can be very clear as to the
So,
wording
like-
that we're approving or not approving.
So by limiting to existing, they already have an existing side setback on the ends.
Thank you.
Thank God.
While you were out of the room, Chad, we found out we really didn't like the 12 feet. We were going to go to the 20, which is the multifamily up in E2 side setback. However, Ron brought up the point that we've been beating to death here. We're talking about existing structures, so the side setback would have already been established. So that I don't think we need to change it. I don't know that it matters.
Did you give him a copy?
Yeah. Tom
Yeah,
takes
I've
it.
got one.
Is the
you, sir.
applicant satisfied with the new language?
I love the new language.
I'm okay
Yes,
with it.
yes.
I'd like to entertain a motion
And
to.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before, as you get into that, remind you that there is a consistency
yes.
statement with this,
Yes.
that you'll be making two motions, one for this and then second one for the consistency statement.
Okay. And we'd be approving or rejecting or denying the
Yes.
newly authored
Yes.
item that you have just handed us.
Yes. And I've submitted it to Katie, our clerk, for the record. So you'd be
Okay.
making a recommendation of approval or recommendation of denial.
I would like to have a motion for recommendation action A for the planning board summary. That the planning board hereby recommends approval of the proposed amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance and finds that it is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, 2017 Town of Sunset Beach Land Use Plan, to allow a zero lot line provision for abutting non-residential structure, for abutting existing non-residential structures in the MR3. Did you hear? I added a word to that, Chad. I think we have to add a word to that, which
Here.
we're not allowing zero lot line provisions for abutting non-residential structures. It's abutting existing non-residential structures.
Yes.
So that would have to be inserted in the
Okay.
action.
All right.
MR3 zoning district and finds, 2, that it is in the public interest because the proposal is in accordance with the goals and citizen desires as outlined in the 2017 land use plan. I would like to make a note of that the land use plan does say that it is not appropriate use for commercial properties within MR3. And I believe that we need to stay consistent with that. However, these are existing non-conforming, if you will, situations. They're existing situations. So it's not as if we're allowing additional non-residential use.
So that structure is at MR3, not in the golf course.
It's in MR3.
Yes.
Well, the golf course is in MR3. There's no delineation between that. It's
None of it is AF
It's
or
noted
whatever.
as recreational in our land use plan, but it is recreational use within MR3, and recreational use is an appropriate by our land use plan usage of property within MR3. All right, I've complicated this, Chad, but I would like to have a motion that we accept action A with the addition of the word existing. Can we have such a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we accept planning board summary action A of the revised language with the inclusion of the existing non-residential note
After the word abutting.
after the word abutting. Thank you. Anyone for a second?
I
Oh.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item UDO Amendment 606C, MR3 non-residential side setback has been approved. We go on to the last item in our agenda under new business, final plat,
Nope.
UDO Article 6, Section 6.04, Table of Permitted Uses, Special Uses. Chad, can you give us some background, please?
Yes, sir. Riptide Builders LLC has submitted a text amendment to amend Article 6, Table of Uses, Section 6.04, Table of Permitted Special Uses, and Article 7, Supplemental Regulations, adding Section 7.37, Neighborhood Mixed Uses. Planning staff has had multiple meetings and conversations with Riptide Builders LLC, community planner and public relations staff member Todd Rademacher on a text amendment that would allow such of the uses such as the following in the MR3 zoning district: real estate office, professional neighborhood services, property maintenance building, restaurant, brewery, bottle shop, coffee shop, wine shop, ice cream shop, bookstore, private library. The uses are currently interpreted in the table uses under the current Unified Development Ordinance. Mr. Rademacher, on behalf of Riptide Builders, has proposed to add supplemental regulations to each use in the MR3 zoning district to keep the harmony of the residential neighbor of the zoning district protected. As the Unified Development Ordinance is currently written, it is proposed that uses that Riptide Builder LLC is proposed exist in the table of uses, table of permitted / special uses, with Cetro being a unique development inside the town limits of Sunset Beach. The uniqueness brings a community of single-family, multifamily, 3 18-hole golf courses, private community centers, and non-residential uses that are conforming and non-conforming. The uses that Riptide Builders LLC are proposing currently exist in the table of permitted special uses. The only use that is being proposed that is allowed in the MR3 zoning district is a restaurant. So out of the current uses that are proposing, none of them are permitted in the MR3 except for restaurant. Restaurant is right now a special use permit. Real estate, the 20,000, and then it goes into, I provided the land use language in there for high density residential because it accepted applicable zoning classifications as MR3. Medium density residential, again, it references applicable zoning classifications as MR3. There is the land use map and the current zoning map. Staff's proposal would be to allow the uses as permitted uses via by right with standards or special use permit. Permitted by right with standards should be considered with the recommendation of instead of with neighborhood of 36 holes of golf, but proposed uses must be a minimum distance away from a single family home. Staff and Todd have talked about that. He proposed the 36 holes of golf. It could be a little subjectable when you get into the 36 holes of golf. That's why we've had conversations a little bit about both. But he had submitted via the text amendment specifically for adding in supplemental regulations 7.37 that the 36 holes of golf stay. Staff has been a proponent of amending the UDO to be more user-friendly instead of user-restrictive. However, when making these changes inside residential zoning districts, the protection of the residential part of the zoning district must be essential. So if you have any questions, I'm available. And then you also have Mr. Rademacher, who submitted the text amendment as well.
Thank you. Just some opening comments on this because this is quite complex. In what the applicant has submitted under A, allowable in neighborhoods with 36 holes of golf, what is the determination of a neighborhood? I believe what they're getting at is Sea Trail as a neighborhood, but somebody could make the argument that the entire municipality is a neighborhood, and extend this to Sandpiper and Windfall and other areas. I know that's a stretch, but there is no definition, if you will, as to what a neighborhood is. 36 holes of golf to me seemed a little, I didn't quite understand it, because Sea Trail right now has 3 18-hole golf courses.
Correct.
Plus Oyster Point
Well,
has.
welcome to make it 72 holes. Or, excuse me, 54 holes.
Right. Because Oyster Bay is separate, right?
Correct.
Well, but I'm talking about neighborhoods. They're
Well-
still part of Sea Trail, so it's.
Well, no, not Oyster Bay, right?
Yes, it
Oyster Bay is part of Sea Trail.
They're a member of the.
They're
all
just
the
not a part
POA,
of the master stormwater plan, things of that nature.
But they're governed by all Sea Trail regulations.
They're built out though.
Well, pretty much. There's a few vacant lots.
Correct.
So, well, that whole thing was trying to, well, let's get to the crux. That whole thing was trying just to say Sea Trail, right?
I don't know.
That was
Well,
our intention, was try
why
to
don't we just
limit
say
it
Sea
down
Trail?
to,
And define the property specifically.
But that would make it 4 18-hole golf courses.
Oyster Bay is not part of Sea Trail.
The golf course may not be, I don't think.
Correct.
Right.
But
It is owned by, I believe, it's owned by some other company and leased out by
Yes.
the Legends Group.
Well, it used to be. It's now. Well, it's in the process of flux.
It is
but
out of Sea Trail Corporation doesn't, or China Way does not open it or own it
Yes, that's correct.
anymore. It is
To my
completely
knowledge.
separate entity.
What I'm talking about is that it is a part of the residential area, MR3 within Oyster Point is a part of Sea Trail.
And some of it is out of Sea Trail.
Well, very little.
Right. But some of it is. Correct.
Okay. I think that that's complex when we deal with the term neighborhood. It talks about all commercial requirements shall be met for any proposed use. The commercial requirements are pretty limited, if you will. The only commercial requirements we have for restaurants is parking spots. There is some street lighting. I look at these uses that are being put before us, the 10 of them. Some of them are very close to being existing uses, like libraries, but the word private makes it different because the library definition that we have, right, or the library use we have right now is really intended as a public library, as opposed to a private library, which is what's listed here, which are only allowed in business districts, municipal districts, or MUD districts. And I look at these uses as being all appropriate for non-commercial areas that we have within our town. There's like 4 of them within the MUD district, the MR2, the MB2, the MB1, the BB1. I have difficulty approving these uses and not picking on any one of them as a right, as opposed to requiring that process to go through special use.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, just for a second, kind of clarify, private libraries, all this. So real estate office would be considered, it's in the table uses already, it would be considered real estate sales management office in a separate building. Professional neighborhood services is already there. It would stay professional neighborhood.
That is special. Real estate office in MR3 is a special use with supplemental regulations
Correct.
right now.
Correct.
And I want to be clear, in my mind, what we're being asked to do here
Yes.
is to make it a right,
Correct.
not special use.
And I want to make it clear because you said private library and I wanted to clarify something.
Okay.
the maintenance, property maintenance building would be deemed in the table uses, because my job is people bring to me uses. Hey, I want to open up X, Y, and Z.
And you try to find
I have
a
to
niche.
apply it
Yeah.
to the existing table uses, to the closest use that we have.
Mhm.
Storage facility would be deemed as proper in the property maintenance building classification. Restaurants would be considered a restaurant, brewery, bottle shop, coffee shop, wine shop, and ice cream shop. Bookstores already there. And then libraries. Libraries is already in the table uses as well. So I know private libraries was submitted, but it would still be deemed a library. So we would not be adding private library to the existing. We would classify that
Okay.
under library.
But still, right now, it's not allowed. in
Correct.
MR3.
Yeah, because that whole number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is all restaurant, comma, food service,
Correct.
or should be just called
Yes.
food service. We,
And our intention was kind of try to
I know, right.
rezoning probably opened the door to too many uses.
Hmm.
We felt like, and certainly uses that we would not want to see in any residential subdivision. I mean, our goal was to provide pedestrian scaled, minor commercial districts like you might find downtown village of Pinehurst, that you can walk from your house or from the Carolina and go to a small restaurant, go to a little service area, as it were, right there within the community, especially as you're talking about having convention centers back open, that doesn't interfere with the traffic. You've got a neighborhood of 1,500 homeowners in that area, and let it work for them. Or something like the village of Biltmore, in Biltmore, right outside the Biltmore Estates, where, you've got some, while that's a little denser, but you've got something that services a very upscale community in those areas. These are areas that would all, if they got developed, would provide the landscaping, meet all the, beyond just parking requirements and stormwater requirements. You've got major buffers that would have to be built in there.
Right.
And we just wanted uses that mixed well for this type of neighborhood. Looking back on the history of the neighborhood and what it was intended to be, what it's set up to be, is for something more along these lines. And we were looking for ways to do that on properties that we have, available for this type of use. If you look at Sea Trail in general, you've got off of Shoreline Drive, you've got our office, you've got a vacant tract of land, which now butts up to a fire department, which butts up to also, you've got an overhanging bridge that sets down on it, which is obviously, it'd be nice to put a commercial building there that would kind of blend in with a bridge and a fire department, and even buffer the single family homes from the noise and things of that nature.
I'd like to get your thoughts on a comment I'd like to make. You're bringing up a site-specific situation, and I agree. When you're talking about the bridge, and obviously I don't want to put a single-family home that I'm going to live in right behind the Sea Trail entrance sign to the south entrance with the bridge right there, the traffic and everything else. However, site-specific variances
I was getting ready to go into other
are
tracts of land.
appropriate for our Board of Adjustment.
It's not really a variance. Y'all have heard me throw out.
Can't have use variances.
Yeah. So
Okay, excuse me.
yeah. So where you're going with that, you were almost there. But where a site-specific plan comes into play is a tool we don't have in our UDO. Hopefully, as we get through with the rewrite and audit, we will. And that is conditional rezoning, where you rezone a property to a specific site plan. Todd and I have had those conversations about multiple pieces of property that they own. Again, this is outside the scope of what we're looking at here.
But it's an appropriate way to deal with this situation.
The issue is that time constraints limit that, because we're not done with the UDO audit yet. Again, that's outside the scope of what we're doing. This can't factor into the ruling of what's in front of you, but this is where conditional rezoning would come into play.
Right.
And the problem we ran into because we talked about, excuse me, we talked about rezoning the property, which would just kind of make everything work per se. But then the uses you get into when you start talking about some of the zoning districts, you get into uses you just frankly don't want inside any residential community or adjacent to any residential community. You know, you open the door to more intense uses that just honestly have no business, you know, in these areas.
Well, throwing a monkey wrench into here, you could put a brewery in or a library at a location. And we've now, as a town, allowed that as a non-residential use, commercial use within a residential neighborhood.
Yeah, well, the problem,
Then the use of that could change to something else within the use table, to a tattoo parlor or something else.
Absolutely
and then
not. Not asking for that in any way, shape, or form. That was the whole point of asking for these very specific uses. We didn't want to open that door to sexually oriented businesses, tattoo parlors,
Massage parlors,
car dealerships. I don't know what have you. None of that intense stuff. We wanted, like I said, when you walk out the Carolina at Pinehurst, you go to a pedestrian scale, walkable community. You
Yeah.
can grab a paper. You can grab a note card that you
But there's
can,
also buffers there.
and there would
Yes.
100% be buffers with this because the buffers for commercial uses in the landscape ordinance, and Chad and I did have this conversation when we were talking about this, all come into play. You still have your street trees that'll come into play, your parking lot.
Yeah, but you're not talking about and I'm not trying to correct you here, but the way I see it in my mind, the buffer could be a 40-foot buffer. In Pinehurst, there's a city block buffer to get over to the restaurant area.
Not
that
necessarily
is,
right behind the hotel is a single family home that butts right up, not the Carolina, but one of the smaller ones. I think it's the Holly Tree Inn.
Yeah.
There's single family home that butts right up to
Well, but the Holly Tree Inn's been there for about 100 years too, so it's.
they're very lucky. And, you know, the town accommodated that. And that's what I'm trying to say. We're trying to get to a point where we can have that kind of lifestyle, which I think is envious of everybody, without opening the door to
So
something nobody wants.
so what we're trying to get to here, we just go ahead, Sybil.
Okay.
Go ahead. You had your hand up. You beat me.
Yeah, I've been,
Sorry,
don't talk
Sybil.
too much. It's supposed to be me that talks too much. My thought on this is with all of the building that's going on, and I think the way that building is going generally is they're having these like mini downtown areas, for lack of a better term,
Village centers.
where people can go. They can get a pizza. They can go work out at a gym. And I think these are all attractive things. And I think if we get ahead of it and start putting in the buffers and the no, not this, and all that, I think that would be really good for our community. I mean, everybody always loves to come here anyway because it's Sunset Beach, but these are other enticements and other things that people can do that will make our area more upscale.
Right. I was kind of going the same way because I think what we're trying to do here, we've talked about it in the UDO thing, is these non-residential uses of property inside a residential zoning district neighborhood. If we figure out how to decide it, that's what we're trying to do here. Because I think what people are going to is what Sybil talked about, is not having to get in an automobile all the time to go someplace. So some may say lowering your carbon footprint because you could just walk
Yes.
from your home to a
Exactly.
bookstore and a little restaurant and the dry cleaner. Well, nobody dry cleans anymore.
I think we have an obligation here, though, with to allow these any place in
Right.
any vacant lot.
Exactly.
Is
Well-
I would hate to see, and I love coffee, but I'd hate to see a coffee shop put in on the vacant lot next to me, and because it would detract from the neighborhood. And also, I believe that we have an obligation under the land use plan to be very specific
Oh, I have no problem with being specific. That's what I think we should be doing. And to have it in a certain area, not one thing here and one thing over in that thing. And no, it's got to
But
be
the only way to
specific.
do that is to have it as a special permit,
Well,
which has to have a hearing with a site-specific set of situations. Wouldn't that be true, Chad?
If you're looking at a special use permit, it would be I mean, are you talking about restaurants?
And any of the things listed on here.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it would be a non-residential entity with a site plan. Just
I
like,
think the important thing to remember too with special use permits is special use permits don't inherently deny something. They do still. It's a layer,
It is.
and if your ordinance is laid out well with the right specifics, you're good to go. More along the lines of what Sybil was saying, not to discount. I mean, there are certainly some uses that definitely need to fall into that.
But even looking at these uses,
libraries. So when I submitted this, remember, hotels and restaurants are already allowed, within MR3, all MR3.
not by right.
The definition of special use just gives the opportunity to add additional reasonable conditions by the general statutes,
Yes.
but it does not give you carte blanche to deny a project, I guess is the best way to say that. Chad, correct me if I'm wrong. Please.
no, yeah, I mean,
There's
if
reason.
it's
Which
special
is
use
why
permit.
we were
There's only
asking.
certain reasons allowed for denial.
Yeah, I mean, reasonable conditions up
Right.
to the agreements from the applicant, correct?
But and those reasons are very specific as to protection of our existing population
Yeah, I mean, you could, like, for example,
and conformance with the land use plan.
correct, and you can also add in there, you bring in the land use plan can be brought into it because it allows for that, and again, reasonable conditions such as an extra buffer or whatnot, planting extra vegetation, but it has to be, because it's not specifically in the UDO, it would have to be agreed upon by the applicant. And what that does is that if you get into a non-consistency with the land use plan where you look at the applicant, hey, we're okay with this, we would be more okay with this, and like, hey, would you be willing
To
to
do this.
do this? It's not, you're not blackmailing the person by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I think we all agree with that, and I'll make a quote from the May 5th Planning Board meeting that we just approved those minutes. At our meeting, we asked the COG, Council of Governments, to present reasonable solutions to allow restaurants in residential and or adjacent to residential zoning districts via special use permits. And that's quoting from the minutes. And COG is working on that. We as a board realize that restaurants can be a very attractive addition adjacent to or within a residential or adjacent to a residential district, but that there needs to be certain caveats
right.
that control that so that it protects the people that are there already. It's not as if you're buying a house with a restaurant already there. We would then be allowing a restaurant to be put in as a special use.
And again, that's one conversation with the restaurants, but you need to have the conversation with the board and the applicant of the other uses that are.
Well, I know, I'm just saying that this is.
And then the
upfront
supplemental
right now.
regulations are submitted there.
And I think as the ordinance is written now, restaurants are already special use permit.
Correct.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
So,
And Ron said something about food service, which that excited me. But there is no food service
Yeah, well, our
use.
definitions have to be
Yeah.
obviously.
Anyway.
I think that's the problem I ran into with my submission is I tried to be very pinpoint precise with,
Well, you know what your plans are.
well,
You know
I
the
know
re-
what I've done this enough over the years to know what people don't want in a residential neighborhood. and they don't want carte blanche rezoning over
I wish
the
you
top
would
of it.
say what people want in a residential neighborhood.
Well, they want to be able to walk and go read a paper.
Okay,
at
I
a
was
pace.
just trying to be a half glass full. It's,
They've already, I mean, in this community, what we were trying to do also was protect the library aspect that they already have there. If they ever decided they wanted to move it, expand it, there's going to be new buildings inside of Sea Trail as the years go on. And right now, the ordinance box is just the homeowners in.
well, I think everybody on the board unanimously agrees that there are some very attractive, select
Correct.
non-residential uses that would be very appropriate and desirable for the people. It would increase property values. It would increase interconnectivity of neighborhoods and walking and bicycling.
Yes. 100%.
However,
you've got everything there.
to
I've
allow
written
it anywhere you choose by right is where I have an issue.
And I know the town can't speak to this. Well, you can speak to it, but it doesn't have any bearing legally. But those types of issues are laid out and spelled out within the declarations of the different neighborhoods. You know, these specific lots are solely for residential use. That would have to go before the individual neighborhood. You couldn't just go into Sandpiper Bay and buy a lot and you know, should this pass, and just say, well, this wouldn't apply in there. But you couldn't build a restaurant right now in Sandpiper Bay if you wanted to just buy a couple lots. Their HOA would, or any HOA, would have a problem. If you
Well,
took out, I'm going to tear down
yeah,
these two houses and build a
That's
restaurant.
fine, Todd, but the reality of it is, and I'm going to be very careful in my wording here, the Sea Trail HOA is a little different entity than the Sandpiper Bay HOA.
Mr. Chair, I might help you out here. Looking at this overall, bringing in, because we don't know what different HOAs say or don't say.
Correct.
So applying the HOA, even part of this, whether you live in any kind of HOA located within the MR3 zoning district, is kind of irrelevant, because you are looking at this in the MR3, hey, this is what is allowed. Then it is up to those specific HOAs that we don't know what is in or out, would be allowed or not allowed, to then govern those. So
I would also interject that that we would be fine with increasing to, like I said, the 54 holes. It's a fantastic way to protect the golf courses down the road. Listen, if something happened, which is certainly not our intent, if something happened to those golf courses and you lost 2 golf courses for whatever reason, a golf course, it would pretty much prohibit your ability to move forward on any commercial development. The whole goal is to make sure that the golf courses stay vibrant and alive, and make sure that you have a convention center, you have the ability to make sure that all of this is flowing nicely so everything can keep on. I mean, we're in a situation with a lot of these golf courses where we're seeing things close down, and we have a unique opportunity to do something that will help these areas survive and thrive for years to come. And
that's a common interest that we all have here in Sunset Beach, certainly.
I certainly respect your opinion on that. Sometimes I think it's a little more dire than people understand.
I just have trouble with MR3 morphing into a mud district. And that's sort of where this is going. And I realize there's only 10 uses that are being brought before us, but there could be 10 more uses that are brought before us, or one more use that's brought before us. And by having these 10,
And I think what we need to do is look at this particular subdivision through the lens of what it was intended to be. And this is pretty much bringing it back to its original intention, which was to be a resort community. It had its eyes on Pinehurst by the original developers when it was being laid out. That's why you see a lot of the outlying parcels, like over by our office, at the entrance to Old Point Road. You know, they were left alone. They were going to be some of the last to develop, and they're sitting on main corridors. So when you drove into
Old Point Road is the new name.
that's
road.
the one that goes by the Maples Clubhouse.
It was Clubhouse before that.
And they're in areas that aren't inherently adjacent, if you were, to
Aren't there some archaeological issues right in there too?
Archaeological.
Maybe not. Okay.
There's some old sewer septic fields from Royal Post or Club Villas used
Okay.
to pump over there, but you have these areas that were laid out and 30, 40 years ago, 25 years ago, excuse me, that were meant to service the convention center and service the 3 golf courses.
And that would work out. I think everybody would embrace those certain areas within MR3 as latitudes for multifamily, for non-residential use. It's the non-specificity of it that I have problems with. I don't know where Chad went. Unless
He's just
There.
leaning back.
Oh, there
He's
you
just
are.
leaning back.
You guys both lean back at the same time.
I couldn't see you anymore.
Okay. Couple things, I guess, on my mind. You mind?
Please, no.
Please.
With the existing list of 10, and what I understand from Chad is, in his area, the table, the 6 items on the table cover all the 10, right?
Correct.
Okay. I guess I'm comfortable to a point. 9 out of the 10, or 1 out of the 6, I'm not comfortable with, and that's 3 on their list, which is property maintenance building that we call storage facilities. And my thought is that we sticking, because you look at our 7.29, it's kind of pretty loosey-goosey with this. But are we then allowing like facilities that store hazardous materials? Pesticides. I mean, you have a lawn maintenance building there with gasoline and pesticides.
Well, the problem is we have golf courses here that have highly chemically oriented. with
Some for the
fertilizers.
subdivision,
Yeah,
exclusive from golf courses.
Yeah. In addition to.
So I'm everything else seemed to be like services for people that live there, and this one popped out to me is like describing it as proper maintenance building or a storage facility was not for use by people, but was used by ownership or maintenance, and I wonder why that was there.
So we have the ability to put in property maintenance facilities. We have the ability, we don't have the zoning to do such.
So why would you want to?
Because you've got a subdivision of 1,500 units that has like what we have upcoming, new street lighting, new landscaping on a yearly rotation, mowing that has to be taking place, all kinds of maintenance facility type issues for a subdivision. I mean, let's be
So
honest.
you want to put up a separate building on a residential lot, or
Well, everything's residential in Sea Trail, which is part of
so
the issue we have.
some space in this
Yes.
community will be set aside for a separate maintenance building.
Correct.
Not that there's going to be a space with a bunch of connected buildings.
Oh no, mini
and
storage.
one of them being a maintenance.
Oh no.
So I don't want any maintenance or storage facilities adjacent to certainly anything residential or adjacent to
I believe
another
that's-
non-residential use.
So in section 7.29, it specifically states
No mini
storage
storage.
facilities may be allowed pursuant of the table uses allowed in section 6.04, subject to the following requirements.
Yeah.
A, may not include establishment of self-storage storage units.
Yeah, I see that one.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, so you got, say you want like, maybe this is just not possible because it doesn't exist. You have a place where there's 4 things: a bookstore, a restaurant, a donut shop, and then the one can be, can any of this be connected buildings? Sort of what we
You
went
can-
back to and just did.
Yeah, I mean, you could put, if you're
If
technically,
if right now they're saying, okay, they got a big thing and they're going to have one building that's going to be maintenance. But does this also give them to say, well, let's build a building and half of it's a restaurant and the back half we'll use for a maintenance?
Why would you do that?
I'm not saying whether you would. I'm saying, are we allowing that to happen?
in theory, if you want to put a maintenance building in a
If the,
Strip
the-
mall?
here's the thing
Yeah.
is the ordinance is very specific. If you get into the details of the maintenance facility, it talks about the buffering, and basically you're not going to be able to see a maintenance facility. So if
But
you
I'm
It
looking
talks about
for-
a fence
I'm
and
talking
buffering,
about
yes.
the common wall stuff. Are we allowing any kind of common wall between a maintenance or storage facility and any other non-residential use?
I think in theory on paper.
It has to do with ownership. Well, you can't be subdividing it because we've already had that
We just
topic before us,
allowed it on an existing building.
but it's existing.
Okay, so existing building can then that
So-
existing building be split into
so
half a restaurant, half a
Here's the
storage
thing.
facility.
So in theory, let's go with that. I'm getting off the path a little bit, but let's go with that. It's a use. It's allowed. You have a strip mall, 4-unit strip mall. I can put an ice cream shop, wine shop, Italian restaurant, or whatever. And then I want to put a storage facility. Well, I sit down with the applicant and go through it. I'm like, yeah, those will work. Go through the supplemental regulations where you get to B. Get the 7.29B. And that states must be buffered by a berm planted with trees or shrubs and the like so that it is not seen by any town, street, or residence. So therefore,
It
it
is
would not be
covered.
allowed.
I'm not so sure about that.
So
You're hanging on. It cannot be seen from.
any town, street, or residence.
So it could be behind something.
I think it would fall more in the intent.
I know what you're saying, and I think your intention would be that's how to be used. What I'm going to is, out of this whole list, this one is the one that made my hair stand up on the back. You're thinking of probably what you would probably use it for is to put some sort of maintenance tool shed in a neighborhood. But my concern is, are we allowing it then to be connected to other non-residential uses
Well,
that
then
you haven't
you'd
thought
have
of
to go
yet?
into 729 and add that then, which
Right.
would be another stipulation for storage facility.
Yes.
I don't
So-
think anybody would. I understand.
Just-
I don't think anybody. You probably could tell by the look on my face. That never even crossed my mind. If you want to stipulate that can't happen, that is a-okay with me because I wouldn't want that to happen either.
Right.
And,
So-
and if you want a development to work, you're not going to, I mean, you want to sell property and you want to sell a lifestyle, you're not going to do something like put something that's going to offend people or endanger people near them.
And the problem we have too is that, like you're talking about, if you're going to build this type of neighborhood, is having the ability and the facility to keep it
Right.
up to snuff.
Update it.
And I'm sure as everybody's
But
looking,
the problem is that once we allow it, as Pete was going, we now
If you
allow
wanna
it. And
specifically-
then somebody comes up with a bad
I
idea
get
that we
that.
already allowed,
I'm done.
I
it's
think
allowed.
specifically outlawing that is,
Right.
I have no
I
problem
mean,
with that.
I get
see,
where Ron,
it's
I get where Ron's coming from. Is like, yeah, you have the good the golden neighbor type situation. Well, you also open it up to, well, what if somebody just doesn't care, and then this is a permitted use, and you allow it that way too. You know, you're looking at two ends of the spectrum, but you're also right on both ends of that spectrum. Whether you have somebody who cares or doesn't care, likes it or not likes it, you know, that type thing. That's the
So I guess I have no objection to that use, as long as it's a separate, buffered, and that we have not, through anything else we've done, allow it be connected to any other use. And I'll stop there. And the other thing, I guess, in my mind is, and we've talked about this before, the food service or restaurant, as you can tell from your box, and we discussed this in our UDO meeting, we don't have any supplemental regulations for any of that. You know, only so that, and it's like, as a neighbor, that's like, to me, the worst, well, other than one of the worst uses to be adjacent to is a restaurant, but
We have,
we just don't have it yet.
I believe we have a well thought out, even though I agree the UDO has holes galore in it. We have a well thought out, we have a thought out process within our town where we have different zoning districts where different uses, commercial versus residential, are allowed. As I said before, I think what we're doing here is, even though we're 10 uses, we're morphing MR3 into a mud district. I believe that all these 10 uses can be appropriate at certain locations within MR3. But I would want to look at the specific site and the specific use. I don't know if we might want to, and also the UDO does very specifically talk about MR3 being inappropriate use for commercial development. That's a hill that we would have to have an awful lot of background to get up.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you, Mr. Larkin. I think MR3 specifically applies to Sandpiper and Windfall and Jaguar's Lair, things of that nature. I think where we run into the issue as we're trying to continue to succeed with getting Sea Trail back to where it needs to be and where it was intended to be is that MR3 didn't leave Sea Trail with any parts of the vision that it had originally been intended for development. And everything you're saying about MR3 is correct for the Sandpipers, for the Windfalls, for the Jaguar's Lair, for other developments within Sea Trail, or within Sunset Beach. But I think Sunset Beach is
Oyster
fortunate.
Point is also
Sunset Beach
MR3.
is and Oyster Point, although I inherently state that there is no way you could ever want or try to put something into Oyster Point. The MR3 district and Sea Trail as a resort development don't line up. They just don't line up. You know, you've got a convention center, 2 majorly large clubhouses with existing restaurants and services within them that have major zoning issues to get off the ground and continue to flourish. And that's, by making some minor tweaks in the ordinance until Chad can, and the council of
And I
governments.
believe we're sympathetic to that, as we just, with the prior ruling,
Right.
Knowing the importance knowing the implication of the zero setback between the two different ownerships.
Sure.
Is there any way, Chad, in that 7.37, probably not, but I'll throw it out, to limit the amount of property that goes toward any of this? I'll just throw it out. Say no more than 10% of X property can be used for non-residential uses.
So in section in Article 6, section 6.06
Oop.
C, it calls out that never mind, it doesn't. So
And if there's things that you guys think need to be changed in the supplemental regulations, absolutely open to hear that, open to discuss that and add some things.
In some cases, yeah, it's like the restaurant one is glaring in my mind. We don't even have any supplemental regulations now. Wherever you look at restaurant on the chart, there's nothing in the right-hand box.
Which is unusual.
Right. So obviously we're, in our UDO discussion, looking to write a section. Okay, that is what it is right now. It doesn't exist, and it may exist, but who knows what will apply to any of this. So,
But what does exist is it's a special use within MR3, so we've kind of protected it from that.
But
and if it needs to stay as a special use, I mean, that's a bridge that we can cross down the road because it is allowed by a use. I think more importantly would be to let Sea Trail specifically breathe. We're looking to protect the remainder of Sunset Beach, Jaguar's Lair, Windfall, Sandpiper, not to keep picking on those guys. There's plenty of other developments in MR3, and allow Sea Trail to flourish and be what it was intended to be. Let the mass of homeowners and the mass of people that are trying to get back in there for conventions not interfere with your beach traffic during the high season. Let them golf, let them basically stay within the confines of Sea Trail, which I think was the original intention. It would be a huge benefit to Sunset Beach. Listen, we want the same things that the town wants. What
You
the
know,
citizens-
obviously you do, and you're not going to do something that is not in your best interests to make it look good, make it function, make it user-friendly, make it sellable and marketable. The problem here with me, I'll only speak for myself,
Sure.
is that it is putting our UDO in a developer's hands. And that to me is not wise.
We are taxpaying patrons of the town of Sunset Beach, and please do remember that.
I know that, and so is everybody else that lives within our
Understand.
municipality. But we have rules because some person
And we are just requesting. Listen,
is different than another
I'm not
person's
trying to be
opinion.
disrespectful in any way, and I understand where you're coming from 100%. Our goal is literally, yes, as business owners, to be successful. But our success in a community like Sunset Beach is inherently tied to an upscale resort lifestyle community.
And let's face it, most rules are written because of the few bad actors.
100% correct.
So that's what we're trying to do here, is either write a rule or not write a rule that allows the good actors to act good and stop the bad actors in their tracks.
I think
But I'm not sure how
I
we
think
get
we're
there.
on the
let's
same
go.
page.
Let's go through and
Wait,
civil. What do you?
Well,
Okay,
he's trying
Jerry.
to say
Do you have
something.
something? Let's
Out of all
put
this
our
discussion-
put a bow around this. And see what one of the next three things. What one of the three things that we're going to do here: approve, deny, or table.
Let me correct you. Recommendation of approval, recommendation of denial, and ultimately table to be brought back at the next meeting to then make a ruling of approval or denial to the town council.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Jerry.
Absolutely.
When I first looked at this proposal, I made a comment, I guess, to Pete. I said, it looks like they're going to be buying Maples, because the most logical part is be along that road on Sunset Boulevard to expand all these things. So I agree that you're changing back to 54 holes. And I would at least identify those three courses in this proposal. The Maples.
That's
so
a great
make
way to do
sure
it too.
Identify those three courses. I totally agree with what you're trying to do. By now, you guys are very astute business people. You must have identified where these 10 uses are going to go on in, or have some idea.
We have an idea of what parcels are laid out. And if you look at the master plan of the area, you can tell.
I would kind of go with Pete. I'd like to see kind of where you would think you would put these things.
Unfortunately,
I
you
can't.
can't do that.
But you got to have some.
I can't because I don't want to. I can't as part of this hearing.
Correct.
No, as you should.
Correct.
As you should.
Correct.
Just out of curiosity. Okay. All right.
Yeah, but that is not binding either. So it's
Not relevant.
go on,
But
continue.
it's just be nice. You have this town center, town. Hey, this is a great idea. I totally agree. Again,
Sure.
reduce the carbon footprint wherever we can. Fine.
And I'm 100% willing to share
So, but
this
that
information
was
with
really
you.
my big thing.
Yeah.
One of the three courses weren't going to be sold, and I would like to have those identified.
Well, we
those
certainly
three
could
courses.
change the language of 737A to be
I will say
all
again-
neighborhoods with 3 18-hole golf courses.
Whatever. It's
If you want to specifically call out Maples, Jones, and
it's just make sure those
Bird.
three.
But
I
can
have
we
to
just-
make sure the legality of
Yeah.
that one.
But I think you could certainly say all neighborhoods
You
with
can be specific.
3 18-hole golf courses.
That's fine. Whatever it is, whatever it is. But that also includes Oyster Point in that equation, does it not? Is that Oyster
Oyster
Point
Bay?
or Oyster Bay? Excuse me.
No,
Not-
all of a
Oyster
sudden,
Point's the neighborhood, yes. Oyster Bay,
Oyster
no.
Point and Oyster
Bay.
Bay are the neighborhood. Wait, no. This
I
gets
don't know. I've
Anyway,
just not been
those
on
two
this.
neighborhoods down there that are off the beaten path are
Okay.
are separate to a degree.
but
And
they
there's
are-
probably a way to do this by tying it to specific streets, or, but
I think
I
the
wish I was
integrity-
able to explain this more. I can certainly share with you after the meeting what parcels we have in mind.
But again, that's not binding
Right.
either.
I understand that.
It's, please.
So I just want to make sure, protect the interest of all the golfers, especially the ones in this room, that we have maintained as 3 courses there at Sea Trail.
100%. That is our goal. We have no intentions at all of closing any golf course.
Sybil, where do you stand?
I'm in favor of it. I think it would be a good addition. I think Sea Trail has done a good job staying consistent to the way it was established. And I think the people in there would really be upset if anything different happened.
Ron?
Well, I agree in principle. I think this is a good idea for the Sea Trail property. My nervousness is, again, are we open up the door too wide? I mean, there's 2 ways of thinking here. On one hand, we're trying to narrow it down. We want to say Sea Trail without saying Sea Trail. Okay. Whether that's legal or not is beyond my comprehension. Then, of course, the other side of the coin, is it fair to everybody else that owns a golf course in the community, who, even though haven't come forward and thought about it, by eliminating everybody else, are we really being fair? I don't know who else these other golf courses are. Is Pearl in Sunset Beach?
No.
That's county.
So
So,
the golf
maybe there's nobody else.
Yeah, you got Sandpiper and Oyster Bay are the only
Oyster Bay.
other 2. Yeah.
So like Oyster Bay. So if we write this at, say, 3 18-hole golf courses or 50, whatever's legal, we saying, even though he said, I don't see any possible way, but who knows? They might have some creative ideas over there. So are we being fair by eliminating them? Are we is it sort of like a bill of attainder? So that's,
How are we eliminating them?
once we throw in, right now we have language that say 36 holes, right?
Well, that's been proposed, then it's been altered
And then
to
it's
54.
And then we're proposing 54. So that means none of them, other than Sea Trail, would then, if that's a legal way of doing it, by saying 54 holes or 3, whatever works legally, any of the other properties inside Sunset Beach or ETJ that has a golf course of any kind can't do any of this. They're still not possible because they don't have the number of holes.
I
right?
certainly see what you're saying. I think
So is that just fair to those folks who are not standing here advocating for something? They've had a chance to read it though, because it was published, right? So, okay. So I think it's a good idea. I'm a little nervous that we're opening the door to something that we're not sure of, but I'm not sure where they're forced to vote here. I'm not yet decided where my vote is yet, but I may be forced to decide here in the next minute or 2, so.
but maybe
Yeah.
you'd talked briefly about a minimum lot size, Jerry. Well, one of the 2 of you all talked about minimum lot size possibly for some of this, and that's certainly something that you could toss into the supplemental regulations, if I'm not mistaken.
I would,
Or you want to steer clear of that?
the only reason I want to stay clear of it, because I know you're using a little bit of this to clear up some nonconformities. Well, if your nonconformity lands don't have meet the minimum lot size, then we're getting rid of nonconformities, but also creating one as well.
Well, I think down the road we'll have to fix the office some other way, but
Well, the office, the Mac,
the
back,
the
Pink
Mac,
Palace. That's because I'm sitting here is like, you got a minimum required mean lot area for all multifamily project in the MR3 is 40,000 square feet.
Right.
That's how you do it.
Mhm.
But
So you would say at 737, we'd add to 40,000 square feet.
well, I mean, I'm
Well, it wouldn't
using
be
that as an
40,000.
example.
Well, whatever number it is.
it is.
Right.
But I want to make sure in the kind of conversations that I've had with the applicant that we don't add anything in there that clears up a nonconformity but creates 5 more or 1 more or whatever. So that's the other thing I'm thinking about this in the long term of this.
Fair.
All right, Ron, anything else?
No,
I haven't changed my view. What I am willing to at least consider is not a denial, but a tabling. Todd has come up with a couple of things to come back to us with, let's say a lot size. The difficulty I have is being non-specific. We're violating our land use plan initiatives because commercial is not appropriate for MR3. For example, an ABC store is has permitted uses by right in MB1, MB2, in the Mud District. A wine shop is, to me, parallel with a ABC store.
I thought the same thing until I was told it would fall in the restaurant.
Well, to me, it has the same footprint. It has the same aura. It has the same function. Maybe it might have different categories, but
I see what you're saying, because I can see where it can be a social thing similar to a restaurant, but also it could be like an ABC store.
just a retail outlet.
Yeah, I think the difference there in the planning world is ABC stores are state regulated.
They are, yeah.
Where wine shops are not here.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, and your ABC stores can get a little industrial depending on how they get laid out.
correct.
Or what the state
And
determines.
I don't think it's fair to put wine shops and bottle shops in that category because of that specific reason.
Yeah, that makes sense.
we have to come up with a pretty good reason for the high and medium density residential MR3 with commercial development being considered inappropriate. We have an obligation to do that. In the proposal, or at least in one branch off of the proposal, was a minimum distance might be reasonable away from a single family home. I'd like to see maybe some
Yeah, and that's
thoughts.
fine because all the tracts of land we're talking about, with the exception of one, are
Well,
pretty good distance away from.
That to me gets more site specific, which helps me.
Yeah, 50-foot buffer, 40-foot. I mean, you start
Or-
to, or setback.
200 foot.
Well, that gets. We're trying to bring Sea Trail back to life.
Uh,
So, so I think probably are we leaning towards, or
Well,
I'm
I
saying to.
think we're getting to the point where
Right.
and I'm not the chair.
Well, we need some guidance.
Ultimately, the guidance that I would give the chair and the rest of the board is to find a motion and ultimately flies or dies, and see where we're at, and then if we're getting to a point where we get to tie situations and stuff like that, I can give you further guidance on where we're at with that.
I'd like to suggest we table the topic for more time for applicant to review situation. And I've already talked about my view on special use permit for dealing with site-specific situations. I think that's important as a major part of our responsibility. But some additional narrative from the applicant on the character of the proposed request. Our mud district right now has absolute boundaries, so it's defined. That would be my suggestion, and
Yeah, I don't know what's yeah. So, what I guess I would like to say is that the better way to do this is probably, as he says, table it over to the next meeting, but I guess I'd like to know some specific things that are going to be done in between. I mean, there's two ways to me I see doing that. Tell me where I'm wrong. We can deny it, but they can come back and do it again, right?
So you
they can
Or
go
we
before the
better
Board of
saying-
Adjustment.
you've got 3 options.
Yeah.
You can make a recommendation of approval in the consistency statement that you
Right.
would be stating, you would be making a recommendation to the council that we would be approving this, and then and then going through the consistency statement and saying the planning board hereby recommends approval of the proposed amendment, the Unified Development Ordinance, and finds that it is consistent with the town's comprehensive land use plan. Or you can recommend denial to the town council and go with B. The planning board hereby recommends denial to the proposed text amendment UDO elements to find that it is not consistent with. And either way, this has got to go to council. So either way, eventually you're going to make a recommendation. Hey, town council, the planning board is making this recommendation to you of either approve or denial, or you can table it and direct the staff and or the applicant to come back to you in a month on specific states. But if you table it, those specific things need to be laid out.
Right.
So staff and the applicant can bring forward something to you.
I think we oftentimes get hung up in trying to look at every possible scenario. And we can't do that. We can never do that because things are going to change. What's relevant today or what works today, 5 years from now, it's going to be totally wrong. I mean, we cannot come up with every single little bitty thing that this could happen or that might happen, or well, what if this should happen? I think we need to go with where we are and what works for us now, and to the best of our ability, and then let town council determine whether or not it's approved.
You make a good point, Sybil. However, town council is, our decision is going to carry significant weight with town council.
And we are trying to make a good proposal. I think we are discussing a lot of things that are relevant and a lot of things that are, but I think that's human nature. We tend to go off on tangents, but we have so much to do here coming, with this and with the UDO and everything. We need to try to be more focused, I guess is the word I want to use.
By nature, I tend to be preventative, if you will, and denial would be the way I would do that. If I had to say
But we don't move
thumbs up,
forward.
if I had to say,
Yes, you do. If you recommend denial, you'll move forward to the town council. It'll be a recommendation on the record of denial to the town council.
Okay.
So
And then they could deny it.
or they could approve it, they could overrule us, just like they
But they
did with
always
the
can.
sign size.
But I don't know if that's the right way to do it. But I'm leaning towards where we were a few minutes ago, some sort of continuance on this with specific directives. Because what I feel overall, and I guess I'm a little closer to Pete than Symbol is, we would like to allow this with certain constraints and parameters that we have not yet written.
So,
So what I'm comfortable with is we continue this to the next meeting and then decide A or B. If the staff with the applicant and some of us, if it's possible, sit down and say, here's the guardrails or constraints that we'd be more comfortable with to allow an approval. We're agreeing with Sybil, we allow it to happen, but sort of what Pete's saying, we haven't opened the floodgates and open up the slippery slope so bad because once we change that box from being blank in the table to a PS, it's allowable. And that can't be undone easily. So that's what I feel most comfortable with. We're not drag this out forever. That next meeting, we got to decide on an A or B for the council, accept or denial. But between now and then, the applicant, staff, and us work towards reasonable restraints, guardrails, parameters that gets us to what Sybil's saying. We're all saying we'd like to have the good actors be able to do it, but
We all like it.
keep the bad
I
actors
think
out.
we all like it.
Right.
That's not the issue.
It's a slippery slope issue. Have we
Yeah.
opened the floodgate?
Now, Chad, are you saying that we have to be very specific in our tabling as to exactly what we want the applicant to bring back to us?
yeah, just to be clear, just to clarify why you're tabling it. and direct the applicant and/or staff.
Well, right now, I believe it's too general in my heart. And that, but I am open to hearing the applicant's thoughts on minimum distances. I'm also would like to hear the applicant's thoughts on a general narrative of the character. That's not in the applicant's proposal right now.
It's in the application, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd.
There were some notes in the application.
Yeah.
I even wrote something up for you, Pete. Here. I can read
Yeah.
it.
I mean, if you're in the proposed, provide explanation on the proposed changes, MR3 is existing sites with lots building that we are meant to be utilized for low impact and service related establishments that enhance the surrounding community and provide services that are commonly found in plan. I just want to be cautioned with that statement of we're not getting site specific because we can't.
I
I
appreciate
addressed
we
that.
can't, but our remedy for that is the Board of Adjustment, isn't it?
Sites as a special use permit.
Yes.
Yes.
So what I had written down, if you don't,
Please.
so what I
Help.
had, so by the way, I came to this meeting on this text amendment hopeful that we would approve, but happy about tabling it as well and continue it because I know it's a complex issue. But what I had written down here to your message is to provide a pedestrian scaled area which caters to the everyday needs of nearby residents of the community. The amendment would allow for a mixture of primary land uses within the same building and development site and emphasizes accessibility by automobiles, golf carts, bicycles, and pedestrians. The amendment accommodates an active pedestrian-friendly area of community-scale commercial, residential, office, and civic uses in both vertically mixed use as well as freestanding buildings as would be permitted in a zoning districts. Projects shall mix well within the community, both in use as well as being architecturally compatible with the surrounding, provide services and conveniences to the nearby residents of the community with minimal impact, reduce vehicular trips on major roadways and give the community the good services desired with reduced vehicular miles traveled, provide buffers and landscaping that allow the project to blend with the surrounding community, add sidewalks and additional alternative parking options for various modes of transportation, provide an area within a community for neighbors and guests to gather and relax.
Thank you. With what he just said, particularly the buffer part, which does not change the personality or the nature of the existing community, would that allow you, if somebody comes in and wants to put, and I got to always use myself, wants to put a wine shop in the vacant lot next to me, that you could say that it does not fit in with the or would that be too subjective on your part?
It would be too subjective on my part. Now, let's take that scenario while we're at it. Like, Pete Larkin has a vacant lot next to them in the MR3. Table uses allows with standards of wine shop.
Mm-hmm.
It meets the standards, and then it would also have to meet the landscape buffering standards. All that go into a major site plan. That would then come before you to be approved or denied. So it would be up to the applicant at that point to make sure that all those standards, and again, all of those standards are met.
What if
If they cannot be met, then ultimately, no, it
you
could
could deny it?
Yeah.
What if we entertained wording that is similar to what the Board of Adjustment deals with? If I want to expand my deck and reduce the side setback on my property in MR3, then I have to go before the Board of Adjustment to get that approved. And a part of that process is that I have to survey any neighbor within 300, 500 feet of my house. There's a dimension. And those neighbors have an opportunity to provide input back.
Yeah, I don't think you couldn't do that on a planning board level. Now, the way you do that is you could, again, go back to the minimum distance thing. It's like you couldn't allow it within X amount of distance away from a single family residence.
Right.
But as far as requiring us to send out notifications to the adjacent property owners, I think there is outside of this, we could look at doing that on a planning board level. I mean, we could bring that back as something separate, but that's how you would do it. You would.
Well, I realize we're
not.
not an evidentiary
correct.
quasi
Like, I kind of agree
judicial.
with Chad. I think we can get where we want to be if we look at minimum lot size and distances, either solely or in some sort of combination.
But he thinks of distances as a setback,
Yeah.
and I think of distances as how close is the next residential house.
Well, we could,
And that's something we certainly should and can talk about.
right, to the house or to the lot line.
Yeah, yeah,
So we could say to the lot line,
yes, we could. We could make it a setback.
right, to the resident, right. So,
Could we
I
add
think
setbacks to this?
I mean, the way I would, if it,
it would be in 737, right?
yeah, it would be in 737.
I think that's the task at hand
I-
for the next 4 weeks is looking at lot sizes, setbacks, or distances, or some combination thereof. Do we provide the guardrails and constraints that we think are appropriate, such that it's used in the manner that we want?
I think, and then again, my proposal was because of the golf course whole thing was too subjective. You can't get specific to do at a distance instead of the golf hole thing. So it would be, because you're looking at, I'll state this. It's unfortunate that Sea Trail is not its own zoning district,
Mhm.
but because it's all MR3, you have to then look at it as all of MR3.
Right.
And that's the problem line here, is that it's bundled in that. And that's where the 30 I'll go at two ends of the spectrum here is subjectable as can somebody in Windfall say that, hey, I live in a neighborhood or community because I'm close in proximity to Sandpiper. And then going on to the other side of that, can you look at Birds Watch, because which is their project, it was not brought in as a plat with a golf course specific to it, and you'd apply that. So when I look at this, can it be too subjective? Is there too many loopholes to get around it or apply it? And that's where I thought the minimum distance thing might work out better. Now, it's not up to me to find that distance. It's ultimately what would work out between the applicant and this board.
Right. Which, do we agree that could be worked on in the next 4 weeks or no?
Anything can be worked on.
Anything could be
Absolutely.
worked in, yeah.
Yeah. And we're certainly
Well,
open for
And I
continued
think it also
discussion.
gives us time to have some huddling with Chad and see what we can and can't do. But
I think we
Again,
can.
that's a motion that needs to be made to see where it lies among the four members of y'all. Also with, a motion can be made for approval and a motion can be a recommendation for denial. So I think that's where we're at. I think Todd and I have enough to go off to meet before the next planning board meeting. Agenda packet is laid out, and that will be in July, not the second meeting in June.
I think we could look at too something, if you don't mind, to alleviate one of the concerns, and I certainly understand where you're coming from, would be to specifically denote something about adjacent to a single family residential house, because I know what I'm dealing with.
and appropriate buffers, yes, but yeah.
None of our parcels, with the exception for one, and Chad and I have talked about this, and we've talked about it internally for ourselves, adjoin any single family residential properties. I've got a 125-foot property line on one building that adjoins single family residential. Other than that, everything is expansive as far as adjacent to golf courses or clubhouses and things of that nature. So I think there's a way we can really tighten it up so it doesn't affect Oyster Bay, doesn't affect anybody's single family.
I'd like to see some wording also, or at least some thoughts on the applicant's part. I don't believe the applicant is thinking about putting a bottle shop here and a brewery here and a library here. I think you're talking about a conglomerate of 3 or 4 units in a row to make more of a.
We don't have plans laid out in any way, shape, or form at this point, to be completely frank with
All right,
you.
how do we? I don't want to force tabling on the rest of the planning board. That is where I believe that we need to take the next step. But
So need a motion, and again, I'm not trying to take the words out of the chair, but ultimately you would need a motion, a second, and then see where we're at on either one of three. You need a recommendation of approval to the town council, recommendation of denial to the town council, and then table direction to staff.
I'd like to, I can make a motion, can I?
Mm-mm.
You can, and
The chairman can. You can ask for
technically
an emotion.
you can ask for a motion, but ultimately, I think if it got to it,
All
you
right,
could.
I'd like to ask for a motion to table the topic of the, to the following meeting. And the meeting would not be the meeting in the middle of June. It would be the first meeting, a regular meeting in July. For more time, for us to have more time to review and to discuss with staff, and that the applicant can discuss with staff information and recommended approval, then approval or denial to the town council.
Okay. So I'll try to make I'll make a motion that we table this, continue it to the July 2nd meeting. Is that correct?
July 7th.
7th, excuse me. To the July 7th meeting for further review and discussion on this topic to include constraints that may include lot size, setbacks, distances to other residential uses. I believe that's correct. For a final decision.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We got to know?
No.
We have 3 affirmatives and 1 negative.
Right.
All right, thank you to the applicant.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I now have us finished with new business. And we're now available for public comments, 3 minutes per speaker. Please state your name and address.
Bob Forrester, 110 Crooked Gully Circle in Sunset Beach. At the risk of continuing to try your patience, it's difficult for me to sit on my hands and not say anything as things were discussed, because there was some, I think there was some material misstatements, not on purpose, but there was some and a lot of misunderstandings. One thing that I think that you'll have to keep in mind in dealing with it is that planning is you take into consideration the most appropriate use of land and not who owns it. You spend a lot of time talking about what land's going to apply to, whether it's going to be sea trail or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Another thing that I wanted to point out, that Oyster Bay Golf Course is part of Sea Trail. Sea Trail Plantation is established by an outbound survey filed with their master declaration. It includes a lot of properties that you don't even. It's not just the golf courses. It's not just the property that Riptide owns. There are other properties that are included within the Sea Trail Plantation because they're in the outbound survey that was filed with the master declaration. And Oyster Bay Golf Course is within the outbound survey. When we're talking about golf courses too, nobody mentioned Angel's Trace. That's part of Jaguar's Lair. That's part of their subdivision approval. It's non-operating at the present time, but that was a golf course, and a lot of their stormwater issues or infrastructure deals includes the golf course. I think I agree with you. You ought to stay away from HOAs because you got to look at the HOA documents. For instance, with the Sea Trail HOA document, the declarant, the developer, Riptide, basically controls the HOA. He does not have to get an approval. Riptide does not have to get an approval for any construction within Sea Trail, as long as he's a developer, up until he ceases to be the declarant. Another misstatement I wanted to address was what Sea Trail was designed for. I have some background knowledge on that. Originally, it was not designed as a golf course, had nothing to do with the resort. Oyster Bay Plantation was first established by Sea Trail Corporation. They later removed that and established Sea Trail Plantation, and they had no intention of doing a golf course until Young developed Oyster Bay Golf Course. They were the first one. They said he's making some money over there, so now we want to develop a golf course, and where they proposed it be is along the intercoastal.
30 seconds, please.
Okay. And I take this from research that I've done with gores that I've spoken with. In addition, I don't believe there was any master plan for developing in the resort in the way it was. As a matter of fact, there was a substantial rift between Ed Gore and the other owners of Sea Trail Corporation. When that convention center was built, he wanted out of the corporation and demanded to be taken out of the corporation. They wouldn't.
Please summarize, Bob.
Okay. Basically, that there was a lot of, as I said, a lot of misunderstanding, I think, that took place. But I didn't want to keep jumping up. Not that you'd listen to me anyway. But the final point I want to make is the language, the land use plan is not a innocuous document. That's what the planning is based upon. That's what the land use is based upon. And I quoted it earlier, but specifically, it states that if you're going to deviate from if you're going to be inconsistent with the policies, a land use plan amendment may be necessary. And the language of...
All right, Bob, I'm going to have to terminate.
The MR3 district, if you approve these uses, you're going to have to change 6.03 as well, because that says MR3 is exclusively for residential.
Thank you. All right. Any more public comments? Seeing no additional comments, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the planning board meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting so adjourned.